gang, it's Michael from One Sky, and I'm back with another Lunar Cycle video. This month, the new moon kicks off March 13th, 2021, and it kicks off in constellation Pisces. So we have a new moon in constellation Pisces and a full moon in constellation Virgo. That's a little different from the mainstream reckoning of it, and I just want to repeat for those of you who tune into this channel every month. You hear me say this every month, but we're practicing a different kind of astrology on this channel. I practice constellational astrology or true sidereal astrology, which is different from mainstream Western astrology and different even from Vedic sidereal or like Fagan Bradley Western sidereal astrology. What I'm doing here is using the actual living skies, and you'll see that it's uneven sign astrology, meaning that the sign Aries, for example, is smaller than the sign Pisces, and that's because the star group of constellation Aries is much smaller than the star group of constellation Pisces. So when I say we're using the actual living skies, another way of saying that is that the sign boundaries are delineated by the exact placement, the size and location of the actual constellations in the sky. So a lot of the rest of the world actually places this new moon in Pisces, but they place the full moon in Libra. And for more information on true sidereal astrology or constellational astrology, I want to invite you to explore this YouTube channel, explore my website, oneskyastrology.com, and take a good look into 13 sign astrology, true sidereal astrology, constellational astrology. It goes by a couple names, but this is the kind of astrology I practice on this channel, and that's what we'll be taking a look at. This month is going to be a little bit of a completion kind of cycle. 2 months ago, we had a new moon with Pluto. It kicked off a cycle of transformation. And last month, we had a lot of squares from Aries to Capricorn, kind of initiating new cycles. We had all of this happening under the influence of what in the Vedic world is called Kala Amrita Yoga, which is when all the planets are lined up on one side of the zodiac in between the lunar nodes. And we're going to look at this. We're going to look at this more closely as the video goes on. But this month is bringing in, if you've been following what's happening in the skies, this is really bringing in a sort of completion stage energy where we're wrapping up a cycle of transformation and stabilization of maybe new habits, patterns, cycles of activity, evolutionary phases. And we're going to have a chance this month to ground something that is probably going to be in many ways related to kind of higher principles, higher vibrations. The new moon takes place in early Pisces, a very spiritual star sign, with Neptune and Venus. And when you get Sun, Moon, Neptune, and Venus together, you really have a signature of like, it's a kind of a agape, a very like spiritual love or universal love. And the way this relates to the rest of the planets is something we're going to take a look at through the course of this video. Last month we saw a lot of squares. It was marked by intense square activity. It could have been a difficult month from the point of view of establishing these patterns or processing this change, this inner growth that's being asked to happen. This month we only see 2 squares. We have Saturn and Uranus, which we're going to take a deeper look at that whole cycle and the context of this energy, because it's the main event of 2021. And we see Eris and Pluto still in square. So that's Eris in Pisces and Pluto in constellation Sag. Elsewhere in the sky, we'll see Venus move with the Sun through this entire cycle. Venus will be conjoined to the Sun until the next new moon and beyond. So it could be a very auspicious time. Venus does well in Pisces. She's very happy there. We see that Jupiter and Saturn are leaving their conjunction. They're in the widest degree as we have this new moon. They're in the widest degree of conjunction, and then Jupiter will move out of conjunction. And we'll be off to the next 20 years races after the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the Great Conjunction, which happened on the Sag cusp on December 21st of last year. And that 20 years is about how long Neptune will transit Pisces for. So we're seeing completion energies of the last couple months, things that have been stirred up and asked to transform through inner work. We're seeing an opportunity to ground in a kind of higher spiritual, kind of more universal appreciation, love, understanding, a sort of higher perspective on all of these events. And at the same time, we're just seeing some of these longer cycles, like Neptune moving through Pisces and the next Jupiter-Saturn cycle. We're just seeing them kick off. So it's an interesting month, and we're still in the influence this new moon of the Kala Amrita Yoga, which is a Vedic term for when all the planets are between the two lunar nodes. So you'll notice if I look at this side of the sky, I can see everything, and on the other side, between the nodes, there are actually no major bodies. So that is a yoga that we'll take a look at. It has its own particular effect that is really in harmony with the Neptune-Venus new moon in Pisces. It's really going to help anchor these energies. So, yeah, taking this 2D view, we have a look at the aspects now, a look at the angles, and we see Sun and Moon here at 3.5 degrees of constellation Pisces with Venus and Neptune, and this is reflecting a conscious connection, Sun-Moon consciousness, to sort of a higher principle of universal love, which is when Neptune and Venus get together, there's a sort of agape signature, a kind of liberation consciousness, especially on the cusp of Aquarius. It's a signature of spiritual freedom. And these are the energies that kick the lunar cycle off. So this is sort of the seed that's being planted. And this is nice. This is very nice because the full moon in Virgo is going to give an opportunity to ground those spiritual energies in our actual practical everyday experience. It's also very interesting because the new moon takes place, if you look, you'll see that the new moon takes place semi-square to Uranus and semi-square to Saturn. So with this Uranus-Saturn square that we saw the first contact of last month, now this new moon takes place right on the midpoint. This month is also seeing a new moon that's resonant by semi-sextile and sextile to the Pluto-Eris square. So both the squares that are happening, both the squares, the square from Saturn to Uranus and the square from Eris to Pluto, and these are big events. Both the squares are relating to this new moon. And for more information on the Pluto-Eris square, I want to direct everybody to my January 2021 video, in which I took a little bit of a dive into Pluto-Eris in the same way we're going to take a dive into Uranus-Saturn this month. Basically, the Pluto-Eris square has to do with transformation. That's Pluto's major function is to deepen and intensify things until they transform, until a sort of emergence of something new, like a butterfly from a caterpillar kind of emerges. And Eris is associated with chaos, strife, shadow work, sort of deep hidden aspects of our psyche that are like asking to be recognized. So there's been a lot of spiritual work that's been asked of us for the last couple months, and I did mention this Kala Amrita Yoga. I don't mean to gloss it, but I did go over that last month. When we have all the planets on one side, this is also a sort of a spiritual signature. It can be confusing and distorting because it draws us away from the material world into the sort of world of inner cultivation, of inner alchemy, of invisible, the world of psyche, the invisible world of soul and spirit. And it's through surrendering to that reflection in the outer skies that we can gain success during a cycle like this. So the whole thing here, the whole signature of Kala Amrita Yoga, as we finish up this cycle of inner exploration, inner transformation, inner depth and shadow work. This whole cycle is culminating in this kind of agape, this kind of ability to ground, and we'll see this in the full moon when we get to that part of the video, to ground in our physical experience, in our actual practical everyday world experience, this spiritual perspective and the fruits, spiritually speaking, the fruits of all of the last 3 months of work. When we talk about Saturn and Uranus, we're talking about a waning square, because Saturn is the quicker moving of these two planets. So it is going to approach Uranus, and Uranus will move around in 2030. I think 2032. Yes, in 2032, they're actually going to conjoin. They're going to overlap and come together here in the last degree of constellation Taurus. But their cycle goes back to a conjunction here right near the galactic center, just in the early degrees of Sag in 1988. And So I want to look at some of the points on this cycle. Every planetary pair can form a planetary cycle, because there will always be a slower moving and a faster moving planet. So just like the sun and moon, just like we watch every month the cycles of the sun and moon, the sun moves slower and the moon moves very quickly, and we come around from conjunction new moon through a cycle to another conjunction new moon, and that's what we're looking at here. Very much the energies, the template of a cycle is set. The seed is planted at the time of the new moon. Well, this last Saturn-Uranus cycle was planted right after it had passed the galactic center. So this is a rebirth point, an emergence point, a new cycle. There's going to be a lot of new energy here around Saturn and Uranus things. And when you get Saturn and Uranus together, you have you have the structure, you have the orders and fixtures of life. Saturn, you have the sort of steady, organized principle that Saturn represents. And then you have the process of evolution, of unfolding, of development, of change. You have a very modernistic and futuristic influence in Uranus. So when we get those two together, we're kind of reforming and revolutionizing and modernizing the world. Saturn is the world, the real world. More so than any other planet, Saturn is the real world, the brick and mortar world. So we're renovating. We've been renovating since 1988 when Saturn and Uranus met here in a pretty key degree of the sky. And 1988 was a really interesting year, especially from the point of view of Uranian energies. It was the first year that the World Wide Web was talked about at CERN. It was a year that saw the introduction of internet relay chat. The first fiber optic link was laid between the United States and Europe. And there was also the first well-known computer virus, the Internet Worm, 1988. And is considered a crucial year in the early history of the Internet. It's not the year the Internet was invented. It's debatable. If you ask Al Gore, he'll tell you 1982. But 1988 was like a very emergent time, a very important time in the early development of the Internet. And I want to take a look at this Uranus-Saturn cycle because as Uranus moved into Capricorn, Saturn was in Aries. So we had a Uranus-Saturn waxing square. We had a waxing square. And the waxing square took place in around 1999, 2000. Which, there was a lot of Gregorian third millennium hype, hyperbole, but there was also an interesting development in that Y2K really took over everyone's mind, and this kind of this is when this is the sort of a case of a role reversal. Interestingly, in the waning square, which we're seeing now, we have Saturn in Cap and Uranus in Aries. But back in 1999-2000, Uranus was in Cap and Saturn was in Aries. And another thing that happened almost exact to their main contact, the exact square, was the ExxonMobil merger. So we then had the largest corporation. This is very Capricornian, the corporation. We had the largest corporation in the world was then formed. And it was controversial, but from the point of view of Saturn, we have the ExxonMobil merger, and from the point of view of Uranus and technology and futurism, we had Y2K, like really scaring, terrifying Capricorn, limiting, restricting everybody's, confidence, Aries, to move forward into the new millennium safely. And then in 2009 through late 2010, Uranus was in Pisces, and Saturn was in Virgo. And 2009-2010 was a huge year for the development of the internet and the digital world. It was late 2009, late 2010 as a year saw. And these are all, there were several contacts and almost exact to the contacts by month and date. The Bitcoin emerged just as the first contact was made. And then through retrograde motion, a second contact saw Windows 7 released, which sort of became almost a market dominant universal operating system in the mainstream world. The third contact saw the launch of Instagram, and the web, such as it was then, was sort of getting modernized, updated. We sort of take Instagram for granted right now, those of us that use it, and Windows 7 has come and gone, but it's widely considered kind of what saved Windows, what saved Microsoft, was that they were able to kind of put that together, and it sort of worked well enough. Don't get me started on Microsoft. And yeah, Bitcoin. Now we're seeing Bitcoin become important, and it becomes important to this cycle. And we'll get into why in just a couple minutes. In 2021, we have Uranus in Aries and Saturn in Capricorn. So we have this very interesting, the waxing square, again, was reversed. The waning square is again featuring Aries and Capricorn, these star groups. And this contact will go exact for a second time, 14th of June. 14th of June this year. So we're in between the first contact and the second. First contact happened 17th of February last month. We don't really have a lot of information yet about anything that may have happened on the 17th of last month. I didn't notice anything major in the world of internets, in the world of technology or corporate development, but that's okay. This is the story that we're in. This is the chapter that we're taking part in our lived experience now. So I don't need to, I don't really feel a burning need to draw anyone's attention to any particular event around this. But what I do want to say is that this contact is happening and will happen through almost the end of 2021. Same with the Pluto-Eris square, which had a lot to do with the development and situation of COVID. And through 2021, we'll see these energies, and then Uranus will move to the last degree of Taurus, and Saturn will move to that same degree, and in 2032, this cycle will culminate. Now, what's interesting is that it culminates in a critical degree, the last degree of constellation Taurus, and it's really telling to me that at the fullness of this cycle, when Uranus was in Pisces and Saturn was in Virgo, very first contact, Bitcoin. The idea of Bitcoin was published. It was before then no Bitcoin. So the fullness of this cycle, the completion of this cycle in Taurus, which is where Uranus is headed, and a lot of people are looking forward to Uranus ingressing constellation Taurus as an opportunity to kind of update our currency and our modalities of transaction. And when Uranus enters Taurus, a lot of people are predicting that we're going to see a rise and a mainstream integration of cryptocurrency and of digital transaction and increased online banking transactions, sort of the end of an era of gold-backed fiat currency and the beginning or the stabilization of a phase of sort of digital currency, sort of ones and zeros, this is all likely to be unfolding in around 2030, 2024, 2025, Uranus will enter Taurus, and then 2032, Saturn will conjoin Uranus in the last year, kind of closing up this cycle. And I want to say prior to 1988, I mean, that was really a year that changed the world. That's the power of the galactic center, to start new cycles, to initiate entirely new cycles of expression. And that's the power of a planetary cycle. Uranus and Saturn have been sort of acting in harmony, and like I said, all planets do this. Like taking Neptune and Venus, for example. Venus is a lower octave of Neptune. They're both resonant with the element of water, and they're both very, very loving. Venus is our personal love and our personal appreciation, and Neptune is our spiritual, which is love. It's our sort of, our appreciation of just the mystery of spiritual love. And when we get them together, there's a real, this is the beginning of a new cycle, like integrating and grounding a sense of higher consciousness. So here we are. We can look at any two planets as being in planetary cycle. We've already touched on in this video the idea that last solstice, Jupiter and Saturn came together, and that Venus and Neptune are coming together. We have Saturn and Uranus, and really it's just a way of kind of drilling down and finding more information. You can look at any two planets like this. But Saturn and Uranus are always revolutionizing. It's a cycle that updates and modernizes and futurizes. It renovates the actual lived-in world. With all that, we have the new moon in semi-square, right on the midpoint of this Uranus-Saturn thing. So right as all this technology and this brave new world is developing and the future is emerging, we have this spiritual, Sun, Moon, Neptune, Venus in Pisces on the Aquarius cusp, this big kind of like universal love energy. And it's right on the midpoint. It's right, and actually a semi-square is an aspect that wants to it wants to develop something new. It's an aspect that talks about the emergence of a new cycle, and we're confronted by anything that doesn't serve that purpose. So it's not so much with the semi-square matter of integrating our spiritual world into our digital life. I don't really interpret it that way, but I actually would interpret it as almost more of a balancing act. Like, we need to acknowledge the world as it is, and with the momentum and trajectory it has, Saturn, Uranus, and we also need to acknowledge the greater kind of universal and cosmic context of that, and the context even outside of the physical world, within consciousness, that Pisces represents and Neptune represents. And as Neptune moves through Pisces through the next 20 years, we're going to be brought to and through a series of experiences which kind of center on the reality of consciousness. I think that regardless of what anyone might feel about the development of a technological world, digital currency, the interwebs, anything that could be said to the good, the bad, the ugly of it all, this month's cycle is sort of about this higher principle. It's actually about the conscious matrix in which all of this takes place. And from this point of view, this really somewhat higher point of view, we can see things somewhat clearly. Interestingly, Neptune doesn't always offer clear vision. It often clouds things and offers an opportunity for self-deception. Sun and Venus and the presence of Aquarius are going to give us an opportunity really to take a kind of eagle's eye view on all the things that are happening around evolution and the development of, you know, our increasingly corporate and technological world. And in large part, the effect of Kala Amrita Yoga is to continue this cycle of inner transformation, inner work, you know, on the Sagittarius Pisces axis. And the Sun and Venus will be moving together towards Eris throughout this whole lunar cycle. So we'll be in a phase this month of Sun in Pisces, dealing with consciousness, dealing with spirit, dealing with mystery, dealing with the formless reality, the ever-changing dreamscape, the weirdness of life, and our intuitive, psychic, artistically inspired side. And as we do that, we'll watch the moon move around. And I want to jump forward to the waxing quarter in Gemini. And there isn't a lot I really want to say about this, except that that there's an interesting formation. Mercury is in pretty close relationship to Uranus. That's a half degree from exact, the sextile. And Mars is in a very close trine to Saturn. And these are connected by squares. And Mercury-Uranus is higher orders of thought, an insight, breakthrough, genius. Mercury in Aquarius is really going to lend itself to taking that higher vantage point, kind of bird's eye view, detachment, looking down, integrating everything that we've been going through for the past couple months. And as the moon moves through Gemini, and Mars and Saturn trine so nicely, 16 minutes, a 0 degree 16 minute closeness. I think we're going to be feeling urges here, feeling urges to emerge from this Kala Amrita Yoga, this sort of inner phase, this sort of developmental inner journey phase where we're retreating, we're backing off from the material world. The moon has crossed the nodal axis, so the Kala Amrita is broken temporarily, and by the time the full moon hits, Mars and the North Node will have passed each other. So we're emerging out of this cycle, we're emerging out of this time of inner contemplative retreat, and all of this we can start feeling an urge, a desire. Mars, which is actually on Aldebaran, the fixed star Aldebaran at this point, very powerful influence of drive, of excitement, of accomplishing energy, trine to Saturn, giving steadiness, giving focus, patience, determination, and there's going to be a movement towards stability and security in Taurus within the context of this whole inner process of transformation. And again, transformation, Pluto through spiritual recognition, everything happening in Pisces, reflecting that spiritual recognition. And then looking at the full moon here, very interesting full moon. Mars is the first planet to break the barrier of the nodal axis. So we're in a phase now that is sort of return to normal. We're kind of cleared for takeoff to re-engage the material world without fear of pushback, without the energy of Kala Amrita Yoga being over our heads that's broken. And the moon in Virgo trines Mars Saturn. So like I said, this is an accomplishing energy. It's a steady accomplishing energy. Yeah, Mars and Saturn are malefics, but when you get them together, they can work with each other. Especially the trine brings out a quality of giving determination, Saturn, to the accomplishing energy of Mars, the kind of drive, motivation, the kind of forward moving. You can kind of lean in very, very slowly and powerfully, and just kind of make progress, move things. And the progress that's being made with Moon in Virgo here, this is an Earth trine. So we're in the realm of the practical and the everyday, the actual, and we're integrating the light of the sun with Venus and Chiron from Pisces, with Neptune at home, and Mercury just on the cusp. So and Mercury is the ruler of Virgo, where the moon is. So we have a very Piscean influence here, and Pisces is very nebulous. Pisces is impossibly hard to pin down. It's very illogical. It's very artistic, picture-oriented, very irrational, very psychic, intuitive, very, very, very right-brained, very much of the nature of the mystery, of the unthinkable and the unspeakable and even the unknowable. And so we have all this energy here in that star group, and the sun is casting that light that the full moon will reflect. And the full moon, in its alignment with Mars and Saturn in Taurus and Capricorn, very, very, very well positioned to ground any kind of insight or intuition, any kind of spiritual ideals, any kind of spiritual insight, any kind of downloads or messages we might get, being able to ground that in our actual practical physical experience. And here we are again. The timing is very, very well timed because Mars has just broken this Kala Amrita Yoga, and here we are taking the culmination, this Pisces energy, this kind of completion stage energy, and we're grounding it. We're getting ready for what's next. Mars. We're getting ready to initiate new cycles of activity. Mars in the real world, the Earth signs, and we're really well placed here on this full moon, and there's not always a good receptacle for Piscean energies. There's not always a way to practically ground our mystical insights or our spiritual progress. But if we've been doing the work of the last couple months, I think this full moon is going to offer us an amazing opportunity. So again, that's the 28th of March. And looking at the full moon as the sort of fruit, the sort of harvest of the cycle, I think the new moon, being the kind of seed of the cycle, is a time to, the new moon would be a time to set those intentions to wrap up the spiritual work and get ready to emerge. Get ready to emerge at the end of March as a sort of butterfly from this sort of chrysalis or cocoon process that we've been in for the last couple cycles, really under this influence of being pressured, forced even at times to confront difficult truths, difficult realities, difficult inner demons, difficult aspects of our own psyche. And now, looking forward, moving forward, I think we have an opportunity to kind of hit the ground running. And the waning quarter moon is likewise interesting because it takes place in Sagittarius, which is really a great moon for just knowing. knowing intuitively, instinctively the truth. So as we take account, not just of this cycle, but of the last, here we are with Pluto, resonant by sign, conjoined by sign, if not by degree. We're with Pluto, and a moon in a waning quarter phase is always going to take a look back and reflect on what it liked and what it didn't, where its successes and where its growth edges and room for improvement are, and it's going to start making way for the next lunation. So here, resonant with Pluto, again, we're going back like 2 lunar cycles here, where this new moon in Pisces was preceded by a new moon in Capricorn around stabilizing structures that had been stirred up by two moons ago, a new moon conjoined Pluto, which just really kicked off a lot of just stirred everything up. A lot of transformation, a lot of growth in the last couple months for really a lot of people I know. It's been turbulent, and people have been saying well, I kind of hope 2021 would sort of ramp down, and we will get there. But it's been quite a year. And now here with Moon, here we can look back and we can kind of take stock. You can see that Sun is still with Venus, and we're approaching Eris. That you can see that Mars is not going to go. Mars doesn't go retrograde back into Kala Amrita Yoga, to my knowledge, and we're emerging now. We're emerging from this sort of hibernation. So hopefully there's a sense of some inner or spiritual purpose that has emerged from this last cycle, at least a sort of philosophical or religious kind of connection that's maybe we've developed intuitive connections, maybe we've deepened our spiritual practice, maybe we've found artistic inspiration. Or maybe, if you're really truly spiritual, maybe you've taken up fishing. It's not always the kind of thing where we have to sit in a lotus position and, chant Om while holding one pointed attention on our belly button. This isn't a matter of a spiritual circus or contorting your body like a pretzel. Often it's about just learning to relax in everyday situations, which is where Pisces really shines, and where the last couple months of turbulence have been taking us. So this is where it's all going. This is where it has been going, and this is what it's been leading up to. So with the moon in Sag square to the Sun, Venus, and Pisces, we really have an opportunity to appreciate Venus, a retrospective, that's the waning square to moon, Sun, to appreciate a retrospective look at this whole cycle back to when moon was with Pluto in January. For the kickoff of the yearly this year's lunations, and moving forward to take a sneak peek at the next new moon. We do have Venus still with Sun and Moon back in Pisces, so we'll have a second new moon in Pisces. Again, Pisces, very expansive constellation. I want to say this is interesting. It's making aspects to Jupiter, Mars, which is fortunate and very well placed to kind of come out of the gates, kind kind of let the bull out of the barn in the spring. If you've ever seen that, the bull is very happy to leave the barn, and this is very much Taurus. This is very much Mars in Taurus, and Mars is on Beta Taurus, a star called El Noth, which is the horns of the bull. So here's an opportunity coming up where next month, April 11th, we can emerge. We can emerge from this sort of hibernative spiritual cycle, this sort of inward cycle that we've been under, whether we like it or not, whether we're spiritual people or not, whether we have the star knowledge or not. We're cleared for takeoff, and collectively things will begin to emerge. Mars on the horns of the bull, going to move forward, empowered by Jupiter, and we'll also have an opportunity to finish up this cycle where we've been in the territory of Eris-Pluto's square. We've been moving through that territory for 3 months, and that's pretty serious business. So we'll be closing that cycle up next month. So not to say that everything wraps up this month and then next month we're just going to emerge, but the work will continue. But we'll have hopefully built for ourselves a foundation, develop some connections, deepened our practice, and be able to move towards doing some of that transformative shadow work, having integrated some chunks, some significant pieces of our own spiritual truth, our own spiritual energies. So there's a lot of personal growth potential here. Eris can be harnessed to great effect as work ethic, and channeled constructively, all of this angst and strife and stress. And so with this kind of work-oriented approach, we can head into the next new moon, kind of planting those seeds of intention, and back to early April, looking at all of this from the point of view of the waning quarter, looking forward to that, and really throughout the whole cycle. If you want to take the whole thing as one, where it starts and where it ends is very important to understanding what we're doing. So in the full moon, we're grounding all this Piscean spiritual energy, and we're taking a journey from early Pisces with Venus Neptune, this kind of universal love signature, integrating that, and even integrating that in juxtaposition to the emerging corporate techno dystopia around us, finding our inner truth, finding our ability to relax and to be at peace in the nature of our own consciousness, in the luminous field of our own being. And as the cycle progresses through the full moon, emerging from this sort of more restrictive, distorting Kala Amrita yoga, grounding those spiritual energies in the real world, in everyday life, just as Mars breaks out of the nodal axis barrier, if you will. And we're re-engaging. Through this cycle, we can not only re-engage, but re-engage more powerfully, having taken the last couple months to dig deep, to transform in alignment with the heavens. So I do hope that you all enjoyed that dive into Saturn and Uranus. If you have any insights about anything that may have happened on February 17th that may have been of the nature of technological development on or around, please leave it in the comments. If you have any insights that you want to share, anything really, please do feel free to comment. If you like the video, like it. If you are here and you are just gonna not like or dislike the video because you don't like true sidereal astrology, but you watched this far, come on, it's worth a thumbs up. You should change that. And yeah, if you're interested in transit readings or natal chart readings or personal consultation, oneskyastrology.com. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to connect. I do this kind of astronomical astrology with an evolutionary approach to personal astrology, kind of growth and empowerment oriented approach through the lineage strain of Jeffrey Wolf Green and Mark Jones. All right, I think that does it. I will see you next month. As always, I thank you for watching. Goodbye.